Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not subscribed to our channel yet, please take a moment to do that now. Here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, over the last few years, we've been slowly and methodically working through the collection of these stories of Ray Bradbury. 100 stories in all. We are up to story number 97 today. We're leaving just 4 more to go. Today's tale is McGillahee's Brat. The way these reviews work is I've always done a quick synopsis of the action and plot of the story and then wrapped up with my sort of thoughts and feelings about what it all means and how it remains relevant to this day. So as for the synopsis, a writer named Smith arrives at the Royal Hibernian Hotel with his wife in Dublin. 15 years earlier, in 1953, he'd been there, but never since. On the steps, they encounter a beggar woman with a baby in her arms, and Smith reaches into his pockets for some change, suddenly gets a look at the baby, and he loses all sort of motor functions. The baby yells out, he drops the coins all over the place, and the baby and the woman wander off. Later, talking to his wife, he tries to explain to her that he'd swear he'd seen this woman and the same child begging there 15 years earlier. She thinks, that's absurd. What it is probably just a simple matter of genetics. People have lots of babies and sometimes they all look alike, and this is probably just the other woman's daughter carrying her little brother or her own baby. Over the next few days, they never see the woman and the baby again, but Smith decides that he's going to look for him, and he's wandering around looking, having no luck. But one day, finally coming out of a movie theater, he happens by chance to see them. He follows them down the way and follows them into a bar or a tavern. Inside, he makes contact with them, and they go into a sort of back room where they can have privacy, and through a long period of exposition, the woman and the baby itself sort of tell their life story. The baby is in fact not a baby at all. It is a 40-year-old man who never grew, and the woman, McGillahee, is in fact the oldest daughter of the original beggar who they saw so many years ago. They explained that when he was born, their father basically discouraged him from growing because he was a gold mine in terms of being a beggar. Apparently he plied him with booze and cigarettes and cigars, but more to the point, he basically explains that I sort of willed myself to stay small, and he sort of shut himself off from the world like that, and which is impossible, but it seems that, in fact, it was probably a genetic disorder having resulted from the malnourishment of the last period of famine in which their parents came up in. But they explain that they are, in fact, saving money for a boat ride to America to start a new life. Smith promises not to expose their story to the world as a writer for at least 15 years. But he's, in fact, is the first tourist to have ever noticed them. So, doing his best to sort of make amends, he walks them back to the Royal Hibernian Hotel to continue their begging. And it's a place that they've avoided since he first spotted them a few days earlier as the first tourist to ever have noticed their secret. So, it's a really interesting idea, but not really fulfilling as far as the story goes. It's mostly told through exposition. It's a lot of dialogue, and it's sort of laid right out in front of us. And there's not a whole lot of mystery, which is a shame because I think it's a great concept. What it is, though, is a sort of twisted take on sort of Peter Pan meeting a little bit of Les Mis, I would say. It's definitely a story about not growing up and the reasons why you might not do that. But it's a real sad story as well about the plight of the impoverished and sort of the trap you fall into, sort of genetic. It's almost genetic poverty, where it's hard to break the cycle of poverty, but they're doing what they can with what skills they have. And what makes McGillahee's Brat unique is this fact that he is in fact basically a 40-year-old baby, and they're doing the best that they can do with that. Not a lot going on, but I think if there is a lesson here, it's that most people blind themselves, put blinders on to avoid seeing the poverty around them and the plight around them of others. But I think, this is a real problem, and I've seen it endlessly day to day in like sort of online comics. Like if you read like the comments on stories on YouTube, or I mean on Yahoo News, people always blaming people for their condition. In some cases, people are responsible for their condition to an extent, but they never really allow for the fact that there's reasons that send people into these positions where they have nothing, where they're impoverished, where they're illegal immigrants because they need to escape something. And I think the truth is more complicated. It's too easy to blame people for their own misfortune. Again, in some cases, it is their own fault, but it's more complicated than that. And we live in a world with a system that sometimes results in these unfair conditions, and we basically make it more difficult than it has to be for people to rise out of their station, and we don't show enough sympathy for people in the place they're in. We don't do enough to give them a foot up or a hand up, and that's a real problem that's I would say is not unique to our times, but it is in fact sort of a universal condition. So I think we should be doing more, and it's painful to watch people sort of people who themselves don't have it as good as they think they do, using their slightly elevated position to hold down people who are truly at rock bottom. So there you go, McGillahee's Brat. From what year was that? I actually missed the publication year. See if I can find it here quickly for you. 1970, that's when that was written. Next time, we're moving on to The Aqueduct from 1979, which is story number 98 of 100 in the collection, leaving us just 3 more short stories to go before we wrap up Let's Talk Ray Bradbury for a while. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you again soon.